Sounds of the Week on iRadio.
بدل سبورك ده كان بيجيب ناس من توريد، بيجيب ناس من كابويتا، بيجيب ناس من ملكال بور، بيجيب ناس من تركاكا بريدي بيلمنا. احنا بيجينا شنو هنا بروكات الرئاسه كده، احنا بنحب بعض، احنا اولاد بروك وكده. لما مشينا بعد ذاك مشينا لوكا، احنا مشينا لوكا ما كان مش اولاد جوبا ولا اولاد بور ولا اولاد وين، مشينا بيجينا اولاد بروك، مشينا لوكا بيجينا اولاد لوكا، الجاي من وين، الجاي من كجي، الجاي من وين، بيجينا كده بوتقه زي ما انا بقعد اقول. احنا لمونا في محل واحد، احنا بيجينا نحب بعض لوكا كوكو. جينا هنا بنلعب كوره، نعمل حاجات دورات مدرسيه، وهنا دورات مدرسيه بيجيب الناس بيحبوا بعض، الجاي من واو، الجاي من ملكال، الجاي من وين، والجوبا القاعد في ملكال بيلبس فانيلا مكتوب فيه ابا نايل بروفنس، القاعد في واو بيلبس بيموت في اسم بي جي بي، والواو الجاي قرا في جوبا التجاريه بيموت باسم ايكوتوريا. يعني كده انت ما شغال بس عشان بلدك ولا عشان انا ولدوني وين ولا شنو، انت المحل اللي انت فيه ده بس ده بلدك. ايكوتوريا ابا نايل بي جي بي. زمان الناس بيقولوا واو نار، أصلا الناس بيقولوا نار، واو ما بينوم ماله يا اخي، نار وخلي ولا نار. يعني انت بتكون للحله، ما انت بتكون للقبيله، تموت من اجل الحله، تموت من اجل الجوبه، تموت من اجل واو، تموت من اجل ملكال كده. لكن انا اموت من اجل قبيله، ما علي انا قبيله.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan.
Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, this is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. At least one civilian was killed and 5 soldiers sustained gunshot wounds during a violent clash between security forces and local youth over stolen cattle in Pachong, Payam of Rumbek East County on Saturday. A 35-year-old South Sudanese refugee woman has died in Uganda's Imvepi refugee settlement in the West Nile region after a gold mining site collapsed on her and her sibling on Sunday. This is stories and more coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Lasuba Memo, and now the news in detail. At least one civilian was killed and 5 soldiers sustained gunshot wounds during a violent clash between security forces and local youth over stolen cattle in Pachong Payam of Rumbek East County on Saturday. According to William Koji Kerjog, the acting Minister of Information and Communication in Lake State, the confrontation began after criminals reportedly stole 3 head of cattle. The unnamed owner reported a theft to local police at Panakwach base, prompting a pursuit by organized forces. During the process, the suspected criminals was said to have resisted and opened fire on the forces, resulting to one of them killed and the other injured. However, rumors quickly spread in the community that the suspect had been shot in his home. An accurate report, the minister said, triggered a retaliatory attack by local youth on a military base in Pachong, which was not involved in the initial incident. Minister Koji explained.
Yeah, what happened is that some criminal, they've stolen 3 cattle. The owner came and reported the case to the police of Panawat. Then the organized forces from Panawat base, they pursued these criminals. Later, when they were caught, they resist by shooting at the organized forces. And in the course of resistance, shooting at both sides, till one of the criminals was shot dead, and then one of the criminals was arrested, currently brought to Rumbek. And the community nearby, plus other youth members, got the information that this guy was shot at his home, which was wrongly reported, and then they decided to attack Pachong military base, which is different from the base that pursued those criminals. And in the course of that fight in Pachong, and then 5 other soldiers were injured.
Minister Kwaji stressed that the individual shot was a criminal involved in cattle theft and the proper procedures were followed after the crime was reported. Meanwhile, civil society leader Angelina Adel Malual condemned the violence and criticized the government's handling of the situation. She warned that misinformation and violent retaliation could reignite all tensions in Pachong, which has historically been a hotspot for communal violence. Malual called for patience among both the community and soldiers and urged all parties to respect existing legal frameworks.
So, on behalf of the civil society and on my own behalf, I'm condemning it in a stronger term that the government of Lake State should also give some guidance to the soldiers, because the story is not good. It reflects that in case of anything that happens, the laws cannot be taken into individual hands. And we don't need to create the conflict between the soldiers and the citizens, because it is the citizens that are being protected by the uniform personnel. But if you take the laws into your own hands, it tends the image that it's a clash between the two, and we don't need that. Pachong has been a good place for a number of years. Like we had many stories about it. So we don't need to take the communities back to then, because by then that place was a hot spot, and we don't need it now.
She went on to urge the Lake State government to act swiftly and prevent the situation from escalating further. A 35-year-old South Sudanese refugee woman has died in Uganda's Imvepi refugee settlement in the West Nile region after a gold mining site collapsed on her and her sibling on Sunday. According to Obedi Opoko, the younger brother, both of the late Susan Onyiyo, his sister, was attempting to mine gold in a bid to support her children following a reduction in humanitarian assistance. In an exclusive interview with iRadio this morning, Opoko confirmed that two sisters were involved in the incident. One died instantly while the other survived and is currently receiving treatment at the Imvepi camp. Susan Unyiyo, a mother of several children, had turned to gold mining as a source of income after aid cuts by the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and World Food Programme, WFP.
They were actually looking for, they were hustling, and then looking for a gold. The soil fall on them, two of them, and then the gold passed away. Yeah, they were looking for gold, and then reached to extent that the soil fall on them, and then that's what happened to them. They were in camp, in Bepi camp, yes. They are calling Anangan Yakude. Yeah, and then there's a church called Vranige. Yesterday, the body was brought in Vranige Church. The burial not yet. They will bury today. It's around 35 years.
Reports from Ugandan media indicate that many refugees in the Imvepi settlement have resorted to informal gold digging along the Ore River using rudimentary tools and without safety equipment. Aid reductions from UNHCR and WFP have left many families without basic support, pushing refugees into dangerous survival strategies such as unregulated mining. The digging usually involves open pits, typically measuring 3 times 3 or 3.5 times 3.5 meter wide, that are highly unstable and pose a serious risk to untrained workers. Local economic analysts have cast doubt on President Salva Kiir's recent statement that the resumption of oil production signals South Sudan's path toward economic recovery. They argue that deep structural problems and weak financial governance continue to undermine any meaningful process. Social policy analyst James Boboya pointed to growing concerns over South Sudan's inability to repay international loans, an issue that has led to multiple lawsuits from foreign lenders. According to Boboya, while the oil sector is generating revenue, it remains insufficient to finance the national budget. He also highlighted the narrow tax base burdened by a population where the majority live in poverty.
If we talk about oil as one factor of production, our oil is not receiving the required resources to even finance the budget, for example, right? If you look at, for example, East African, they are going to talk about two measures of financing the budget. One, they're going to talk about the domestic borrowing and also the external borrowing, right? the conditions for domestic borrowing in South Sudan to finance the budget becomes also problematic. The other issue I want to talk about is that in 2011, our poverty line was 45% of the South Sudanese are poor. Last year, 88%. This year, 92%. So economically,
we are closing.
And most of these people are not doing formal businesses, right? That's number one. Number two is also to do with the market conditions, our taxations and our collection of borrowing. And one of the bigger factors also to do with now we're able to borrow, but we're unable to pay. So the international lenders are not interested to give us money for borrowing. You've seen the case with the Qatar Bank of 700 million. Now they're taking South Sudan to a court in America when talk about 1 billion. You've seen the case with Bivaser, right? You've seen the case with ARSC, the company of Bolmel, where now they're demanding Bolmel to pay them 600 million of contractual money from the over 140 contractors, right?
Yes.
Those are the things that if put them in the menu, it impacts the plan of the government when it talks about recovery.
Advocate Godfrey Victor Bullen echoed those concerns, warning that economic recovery is not imminent. He described it as a long-term process that requires comprehensive policy reforms, peace, and strong institutions. He also criticized the disconnect in financial management, stating that despite reports of oil revenues, the central bank reportedly remains empty and civil servants are still being paid via checks without physical cash backing.
We are hearing money is brought into the country, but central bank is empty. Minister of Finance is money in the Ministry of Finance. And we heard from the minister that they pay the people through checks, but there is no physical money
in their accounts. Yeah.
This one signaled there is a poor financial policy in the country. They need to harmonize the financial policy with an interest in mind that there should be a proper procedures of how money is to be taken and brought in. And the other thing is that we need to work very hard and help the conflict in Sudan, because the conflict in Sudan plays a very big impact into our economic. We need to silence the guns. Economic growth goes with peace and security. Sustainable peace and security plays a role into the economic growth. Because investors cannot come to invest in a country where they believe, first of all, the justice system is weak, there is no peace, there is no security, there is no protection for their finances, for their capitals. So all these things cannot encourage investors to come.
A local chief in Rajaf, Payam of Juba County, has reported 4 deaths allegedly caused by cholera, but a local health official refutes the claim, stating that the illness is watery diarrhea linked to recent heavy rains, not cholera. Speaking to iRadio, Chief Philip Lacoste said the first death occurred after a resident developed vomiting and diarrhea. 2 days later, a young man with similar symptoms died before reaching Panama Hospital. A man and a woman reportedly died the same day at the hospital, followed by another fatality the next day. Chief Lacoste also stated that 6 people showing signs of cholera were admitted to the hospital and successfully treated with antibiotics.
إنه عشان تفيكوا معلومة بدون ما تجمع من المصادر الموثوقة بالذات موضوع تعرف كوليرا ما كوليرا، لأن مرض كوليرا كلمة كبيرة. يعني ده ممكن يعمل حجر صحي الناس ما يخش ساوث السودان. الآن في وضع مستتب لحالة إسهال مائي نتيجة للأمطار قبل 2-3 حصل على عندي هنا إنه أنا في محلية رجية فيام كلها ما في حالة كوليرا، إنما ده إسهال مائي حصل وفي كنترول الآن. أنا أفتكر إنه الناس الصحة موجودين على الأرض هناك قاعدين يشوفوا الحالة. لا ما في بلاغ إلى الآن بصورة رسمية، ما في بلاغ. الجهات الرسمية المتمثلة في وزارة الصحة هي الجهة المسؤولة اللي بيؤكد إنه ده كوليرا، بعد إنه يعمل شنو؟ الفحوصات أو يأخذ عينة بتاعت حالة. أنا في تقدير والآن هم الموجودين على الأرض، هم الموجودين هناك.
Rajaf Payam official Abdul Wahab clarified that only the Ministry of Health can confirm cholera after conducting laboratory tests. Before we move to the international news, intellectuals from Greater Tonj of Warab State have reconciled their long-standing differences during a peace forum held in Tonj town, renewing hope for unity and stability in the region. The forum, presided over by Governor Bol Wek Agoth, brought together prominent figures including General Aliu Ayeng Aliu and Honorable Lewis Anei Kwendit, who publicly resolved their differences in the spirit of reconciliation. Their reconciliation, seen as a major boost to peace efforts amid the ongoing state of emergency, underlines the critical role of intellectual leadership in conflict resolutions and community healing. Governor God described the event as a reflection on the contributions made by Warab citizens during the liberation struggle of South Sudan, stating the participant of General Aliu Ayeng Aliu and Honorable Lewis Anei Kwendit. He stressed the need for cooperation among intellectuals, urging them to take the lead in modeling peace and unity for the youth. He said, and I quote, "A pen is mightier than a gun. It can build bridges, save lives in hospitals, revolutionize agriculture. We must convince the younger generation that peaceful ideas, not weapons, will move our community forward." Both General Aliu and Honorable Lewis echoed this call and encouraged youth across Warab State to forgive one another and embrace peace for the future of Greater Tonj. This is iRadio Morning News. Afternoon news. And now we move to the international scene with Madrama James.
Leafy vegetables, including what is locally known in South Sudan as kodra, which was once dismissed as a wild wheat and a poor man's food in Kenya, are now becoming much more common grown on farms, sold in markets, and grazing the menus of restaurants. According to horticulture professor Mary Abukutisa Onyango, this trend is reflected in government data, and some of the health benefits are backed by research. Over the last 10 years, production of local greens has doubled, with 300,000 tons produced by local farmers last year, she says. The professor says it is a remarkable change in attitude, given that people used to look down on traditional crop as inferior, not realizing they were often more resistant to disease and pests and can be grown organically. Elsewhere, the Israeli military has killed at least 67 people waiting for UN aid lorries in northern Gaza, the territory's Hamas-run health ministry has said. The UN World Food Programme said its 25-truck convoy encountered massive crowds of hungry civilians which came under gunfire soon after it crossed from Israel and cleared checkpoints. The Israeli Defense Forces IDF said that it had fired warning shots to remove any immediate threats. It also disputed the reported number of deaths. On Saturday, the ministry warned that extreme hunger was increasing in Gaza and growing number of people were arriving at its facility in a state of extreme exhaustion and fatigue.
Thanks, Madrama James. This is iRadio 1 o'clock news, and here is Darlington Moses with the sports news.
Thank you so much, Lasuba. Memo, starting with home news for candidates amid candidacy for South Sudan Football Federation presidency. The race for the presidency of the South Sudan Football Federation has officially begun, with 4 prominent figures submitting their candidacy files ahead of the upcoming elections. Among the contenders in the race is Maulana Kamal John, the president of Munuki FC, and Mr. Tang Dang, both of whom bring their own football and administrative experience to the competitions. Also, the former SSFF president Francis Amin Michael, who is seeking a return to the top office, is joined in the fight by the current president, Lieutenant General Agostino Madud Parek, who is vying for a second term. According to the South Sudan Football Federation Electoral Committee, the submitted files will now undergo a thorough examination to ensure that each candidate meets the eligibility criteria. The initial list of approved candidates will be released following the review process. And now Manchester United forward Marcus Rashford is in Spain to complete a season-long loan move to Barcelona. The 27-year-old arrived in Catalonia on Sunday night after getting a permission from the United to complete the formalities of a move to Barcelona. Images of Rashford arriving in Barcelona on a private jet quickly circulated on social media. Olympic champion Zheng Qinwen is taking a short break from the WTA tour after having arthroscopic surgery of her right elbow. The 22-year-old Chinese player was 5th seed at this year's Wimbledon, but lost in the first round and said she had been dealing with persistent pain. Thanks. This is iRadio Sport News, and back to you, Lasuba Memo.
Thank you, Darlington Moses. This is iRadio News, and to end this bulletin, here's a recap of the headlines. At least one civilian was killed and 5 soldiers sustained gunshot wounds during a violent clash between security forces and local youth over stolen cattle in Pachong Payam of Rumbek, East County, Lake State on Saturday. A 35-year-old South Sudanese refugee woman died in Uganda's Imvepi refugee settlement in the West Nile region after a gold mining site collapsed on her and a sibling on Sunday. And local economic analysts have cast out on President Salva Kiir's recent statement that a resumption of oil production signals South Sudan's path towards economic recovery. That's the end of iRadio News. If there's a story or an event you'd like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message at +211 925 287.